everyone, thanks for tuning in to Shutter Magazine. I'm Dustin Lucas, and it's time to get out of your way and organize your photos in Lightroom. To be organized, you have to decide to be. I'm definitely a culprit of not being organized, not putting my files where they should go, just importing them, getting the files out the door, and worrying about the backup, the folders, the structure of everything later. What you need to do is you have to create a plan, and you got to stick to it. Importing photos, whether it's family photos, your work photos for your clients, personal things for just you, website, whatever you're doing, you have to stick to the same plan. So what I want to go through is just how to get out of your own way, organize an easier fashion, and then you can sort of customize it and make a plan that works for you. It's got to be in Lightroom though. Lightroom's the way to go. Bringing your photos in, organizing them in Lightroom, only in Lightroom, and starting from there. So let's start by creating a catalog, and we'll go from there. So what you want to do in Lightroom is, in creating a master catalog or an archive catalog, that's a great place to allow everything that you import into the computer into one place. You don't need to have multiple catalogs at this point. Just think about everything from your card directly into the computer and into Lightroom. So I'm going to go ahead and plug a SD card in. As you're going to see, it's automatically probably going to pop up photos, which is a no-no. If you're using Photos, Apple program, to import your cards, import your data, stop. That's the first mistake. So I'm going to go ahead and just quit this. And there's a simple feature to just uncheck that to have it pop up every time. But what I'm going to do is, with plugging my card in, I'm going to go directly into Lightroom after creating my catalog. But before we do that, I just want to sort of talk about how Lightroom, if you've already created a catalog on your computer, or you haven't created one, just open it up, File, New Catalog. If you have created a catalog in the past, it's probably in your Pictures folder, which is going to be in Finder, and most likely in your Pictures folder. So if you go to Username, Pictures, as you can already see, Lightroom, there's created a version there. What I recommend doing is just creating a new catalog where you're going to start importing everything today or moving forward, or maybe for 2017. It's a good start. New Year's coming up. So in creating a new catalog, I call mine master, you call it archive, whatever you want. Just so you know, this is where all of my photos are coming into my computer and being imported and organized into. It's one place. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to locate whichever files that we want to import directly into Lightroom. Now I recommend, if you have multiple folders, like here, so it's showing my SD card. If I want to import multiple folders, or even just one, but quickly filter that into Lightroom, so you notice if I go into import, it's automatically going to pull up my devices. So my SD card is going to show up automatically. It's going to pull up all my images. It's going to start reading all those images to make sure I don't have any duplicates, things like that. But you're going to notice under here, the files, these are where all my different folders are if I want to import files into Lightroom. And so while Lightroom's populating all my previews, it's taking its time. What this is going to allow me to do is drop down my different options here, and I can start to choose multiple folders. Now the difference between going underneath files and under devices is you don't have that same luxury. If I plug in one card or multiple cards, I'm only going to be able to select one device at a time. But underneath files, I can actually choose everything that's on the card. I could choose everything that's on this hard drive. And then you'll notice that it's going to ask me to include subfolders. So it's going to really start to really increase my total file size. I'm already in 10,000, 13,000. It's a lot of files. Don't need that many. But for the purpose of this, is you have the options to import your files. And of course, if I'm going from a card, I'm going to want to copy. And as you see, it automatically goes to a copy feature. If I'm on a hard drive, it automatically goes to add, because it's thinking, well, if it's already on a hard drive, you probably don't want to copy it or back up, which isn't always the case, but usually is. This means I've already imported the files into a hard drive, done all that. But what I want to do here under my under devices for my SD card, is what I want to do is choose the copy options. And as soon as it picks up there we go. So you're going to notice under the copy, and let's start there. You're going to have a few different panel options. And what I've done here is I have it selected for solo mode. This just means that it's only going to allow me to choose one panel at a time, so it keeps things a little more organized for you. I'm going to be using that word a lot for this walkthrough. So what you have here is just it's showing your different folder trees and drops down, automatically goes to pictures. No, I don't necessarily want my files to be stored on my local computer. As you can see, it's on Mac SSD. This is my local computer. I'm going to go ahead and hit this triangle. And as you notice, I have these different options down here. Now, Jess hard drive is my external, my wife and I's hard drive for all of our work. And we have some subfolders in here that I'm going to drop down here and kind of show you how just crazy unorganized all of our work is. We have stuff all over the place. For our son, we have our work in multiple locations. Here, under Lucas Family, we have it under #photography. How cool and hip is that? Dropping that down, we have its own gram folder, and it's all these multiple file folders here. As you can see, it seems like it's organized. Things are all over the place, lots of subfolders, but that's where you have to start, right? And so what you have is a couple options here. What we're doing is we're choosing the destination where we're going to copy all these photos. We can also choose what destination and into a subfolder. So I can name a specific subfolder. Say, for instance, I wanted these photos of my son to go into the master folder of Graham. I can either choose, I've made a raw originals, and I've also made multiple other subfolders. First year progression, first fall, first swing, a bunch of firsts, probably could be its own folder. Christmas, just a lot of things. And then if it's just random day to day, I just go raw originals. Everything could just go into there. And as you can see, I just kind of all have it broken down into date folders, just so I could cycle between dates and just trying to create as much organization out of all this chaos as I can. So if I uncheck subfolder, I can choose it to just go into one folder. So it can just loosely go into here, or I can have it to choose by date. So it'll automatically start to choose dates in here. And this looks like it's going to drop it into December. So as we can see, let's see there. So by date, that's how I have my date format. I'm going to go ahead and have it choose. See here where it's dropping all those files in. It's going into a subfolder, it looks like. Raw originals. 2016. Let's drag this over. Maybe it won't let me. Don't want it to go into that subfolder. We'll just do raw originals. It's automatically going into 2016 by date into a subfolder. Let's see here. How do I have the other ones? 2016, December. We'll just keep it the same. So it drops down here my my other dates. So as you can see, we're already getting, it starts to get pretty complicated just choosing where you're going to store your photos at. So this is my destination. This is where it's going to save one copy. Now, as you'll notice, I can choose another copy or another place where I can choose to backup. It's kind of hidden here. It's under file handling. Make a second copy. I can just check mark this option. And now I can choose a different drive. And so what I have the option is on my airport. I back a lot of my photos up there. And so that's where my second location is going to go. So it's going to be saved onto an external hard drive, and then it's going to be saved on my network drive. 2 locations. I highly recommend backing your photos up. Of course, you want to have off-site backup, which we have cloud storage where all of our photos go as well each month. But each time I ingest photos, it's 2 local drives. One to an external hard drive just to plug and play as we go. And then we also have the network drive. Everything kind of lives on a multi 2 terabyte drive. So the benefit of having a backup, of course, in case my hard drive that I'm lugging around with my laptop breaks and I lose everything, then I haven't just lost all of my photos that I've imported that month before doing my cloud backup. So I can import all of those photos here as well. So I'm gonna go ahead and just choose that location. So I have my backup and my destination in my raw folders. And so a few other options you'll have here is copy is best for importing from the card. Makes sense. But if I am bringing some folders in or just importing some images from a hard drive that already has that's already been pulled from a card, maybe I just want to add them to this library. To this catalog. So what I can do is I can drop down my other options for, let's look for this. And as you can already see, I'm kind of going through here and it's drop down menus, right? Well, what's really great about Lightroom is I can drag and drop if I know specifically where a folder is. So if I just want to type in Graham, just a quick search on the Jess hard drive, a Graham, anything with his name in it, quick folder. Now that that's my iPhone, we can go to Graham, Photography, perfect. So now I automatically just want a quick source. So it automatically drops down and it pulls up Graham. Maybe I want to do it, I like to use Finder only for quick finding, for a quick filter to finding where my images are. So if there's a particular one in general that I want to find, if I just do the Christmas ones, I can drag that in, and it automatically goes to all the Christmas photos. So it allows me to add. And so you'll notice that since the files are already on a hard drive, it's going to automatically ask me to add. So it's just going to add them to the catalog. It's not going to move them. It's not going to copy them. It's just going to add them to this catalog. So it's going to use the location on the hard drive, which is on our backup hard drive here. And it's going to give me those options. You see the destination. Those options went away. Still have file handling. Still have the ability to back up if I want to. But that option's only going to be available if I move my photos. So if I want to move them from this location and I want to import and move them, you have that option. I don't use move very, very rarely, if at all. Maybe if I want to back up photos that I've already, that's not allowing me to back up if I'm adding them. But you can do copy. There's also copy as DNG, which is sort of an old school way when you're bringing photos in to save them from RAWs. Originally it copies them as DNGs into Lightroom. I don't like to make multiple file types. Just keep them as RAWs, right? I have up-to-date Lightroom. I have up-to-date Adobe Camera Raw. Don't need to create DNGs for a universal file type that works on older versions of Lightroom. I'm using the newest version. I'm going to keep the RAWs. I don't need to have multiple file types. That's an option I don't use at all. DNG is just an extra step that I don't need to take. But these are your different options when you're importing. Now you'll notice for all four of these, you'll have the options for file handling and specifically building previews. And a lot of people are, skeptical about, well, don't build any previews when you bring them into Lightroom, so it saves you time. Or it all depends on what you're going to do after you import. If you're going to go through these files and you're going to start, you're going to import them and start selecting, I highly recommend letting the standard previews build automatically. Because when you import those into Lightroom and those have built, it'll be much quicker when you're cycling through photos. If you want to go directly to editing, then you can build one-to-ones. Those take 10 times longer. If you've got, you got an afternoon to waste and just let it import and build, then I'd say one-to-one previews are the way to go. But if you're just wanting to import them, get them into the catalog, and you want to come back to these images later, or you've already selected them, however you're working, you can use minimal. Minimal's great. Embedded in sidecar, it's kind of a waste. Doesn't really do anything. Doesn't save you any time to build smaller previews to then call through. So some of those people that use Photo Mechanic, maybe they're using on one browse. You can call your images in a different program. Perfectly fine. I get it. You want to go through 5,000 images and it takes you an hour. Not having to wait for Lightroom completely makes sense. So if you're doing that, building one-to-one or previews might make sense if you're going to go right into editing. If you're going to do some heavy-ended editing in Lightroom, one-to-one previews are great for zooming in and zooming out. Standard previews are good for just selecting through images. But like I said, that's what your different options for previews are. You can also build smart previews. Now that brings up an interesting conversation about working off-site or working without your RAWs. You can build smart previews right out the gate. So you don't have to have your external hard drive with you. Maybe you're wanting to import these, back all your images up. Now you have to go on a road trip that you want to do some calling, some editing on the road. That's what smart previews are for. So I could take 1,800 images, not have to haul around my portable hard drive, not have to take all the original files with me. I can build smart previews and have a total file size of less than 2 gigs in building these smart previews. So you have that option that's separate altogether, which was added at Lightroom 5. You can choose don't import suspected duplicates. That just means that if you're importing cards and data into the same catalog, you're not going to have multiple versions of that same file, which is nice. in working with. You also have the option to add to collection. So if you already have a collection that you would like to add in Lightroom, you can add images automatically in there. It's just a virtual folder system, so you're not actually creating folders here which show up in Finder. You're actually creating virtual folders that only exist in Lightroom. Just creates a way to quickly sort and filter your files. File renaming, we have some renaming options as well, only at the copy. Go ahead and click back to file handling. Go back to add. As you see, the file renaming went away as we're adding files. We don't have that option. You can rename your files immediately at import, so that way everything that's in Lightroom has always been named the same. You can disregard the camera file names that are built. You can also change that in camera, however you want to, what you want to work. You have some options here for applying presets, also some metadata. Those are some popular options to choose if you already have that data set up as presets, so it can automatically apply as you import. And choosing all your different metadata. You can basic info. It gets pretty extensive in here. Copyrights, everything that you want to embed in your raw files directly from camera that's already not set up there. You have those options as well. You can create presets. It's pretty, you can create a really quick workflow once you have all that information filled out for all of your photos that come into Lightroom. That's a great place to do it in. But we're at a point now we can go ahead and just import some images and see see how we can work with collections, how creating different folders after the fact work. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to uncheck all and just import, let's say, a handful of photos here. And I have a lot of photos in here. I am going to go ahead and choose, let's just add some files in here. Taking some funny photos here. Let's just select these photos. We're going to choose copy. We're going to choose Christmas. I am going to let them automatically go into the folders as they go there. No subfolders, so just Christmas by date. Have this set up for backup. And we're going to choose, we'll choose standard previews that'll just build once we're done. And I'm going to undo collection and just import. So as these start to populate, we can talk about now our post-import process, how to still stay organized. You definitely do not want to tamper with these files outside of Lightroom. What I mean by that is, if we go in and we choose the folder where these files are populating, and as they're importing here, I'm going to go into my cluster of different files here. I'm going to go into Christmas, and I'm going to go to these ones that are importing in today. It looks like I'm renaming the files as well, which I am going to go ahead and stop because I do not want to rename these files. Delete from disk. As you see, one doesn't have to worry about deleting because they're not deleting from the card. They're just deleting from what I had just created. Let's scroll back down. I'm going to turn off renaming files. Didn't mean to check mark that. That's fine. See how that works in Lightroom? If I make a mistake, I can delete those files because I was copying. Now, if I was adding and I deleted them and I clicked delete on disk, it would remove them from whatever drive I was on. That would be a mistake. But for this, I can choose, let's do some of those reindeer photos again. Naked photos of the boy. Sure, he'll appreciate that one day. Standard, make sure that we don't have file naming, and we have it under Christmas. We'll go ahead and hit import. So now I'm going to import the original file names into this specific folder here. And now while this is importing, kind of show you a few different things that are going on. So under folders, this is the folder tree that's created for us. I can choose show parent folder, and it's going to show the outer folders that these images are importing into and copying into. So show parent folder. Now I can drop down all of these and show you where these are saving. So it just kind of helps for the sake of organization to see where these files are going and how that's working. Now once these finish copying and importing, I'm going to show you the problem that starts to happen when you change folder names. So for instance, let's say I create a new folder in here and call it keepers, if I can spell correctly. And I'm just going to create a new folder in here, which is fine. Doesn't do anything to Lightroom. But let's say once these photos are done populating in here, I just take them and I move them into that folder. So once this finishes up, and as you can see how it's loading, it's because there's no previews built. So right now it's building a standard preview. It's still taking that long, and then the standard preview is being built, and then this one's built, and then this one's built. But what we're going to do, once it's done importing and copying, then it builds the standard previews. That's the option that we chose in import. If I zoom in, it has to build a whole new preview. That is a one-to-one preview, because now we're zoomed in. As we see up here, at the very top, one-to-one, we're zoomed all the way in. So that's sort of showing you how you still have to build one-to-one previews even after our standard previews are built. But you know, with an image like this, because it's wider, we want to make sure he's sharp. He's not soft. It looks like this image. We're not focused. So this is, you have the ability to choose, so you can make sure you're choosing the sharp images. But in cycling through these, if I go through real quick, it's still going to tell me loading because I'm still building standard previews. Now, as you'll notice, standard preview isn't built for this image. It's going to have those squares for the ones that it does. So once it's done building standard previews, as you can see, they'll start to change. So this one's going to change eventually. It's kind of changing out of order here. And that one, and this one will change, and you see it starts to make the actual preview. So Lightroom's taking the raw file and creating a JPEG preview, in a sense. So while it's building those standard previews, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move these files out of this folder. Let's just move them. I'm going to hold Command, and I'm going to move them into the Keepers folder. Now Lightroom immediately is giving me exclamation points, and I've lost my file. As you notice in a second, we can't edit, we can't do anything once it actually loses these files. Photo is missing. File cannot be found. It's kind of funny that it's giving me mixed. I'm pretty sure we removed all of them. Oh, well, I don't think that's the folder this is in. I think those were all in there. All 30. So all these photos, as you see, they're all missing. It's because I've moved the files outside of Lightroom. So I'm going to go ahead and undo in Finder, and now my files are back. Showing original photo, now they're all here. It's loading, it's loading, it's loading. So let's say I wanted to do that same thing. I wanted to create a Keepers folder, which is perfectly fine. So what I can do in this Christmas 2000, let's move this over so we can see a little more. We can create a new subfolder in this Christmas 2016, similar to what we've done here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. So Christmas 2016, this is the folder that we're selecting on in Lightroom. I can right click on it, choose Show in Finder. That gives you a quick, it gives you the ability to view it in your file application. You can also create a folder inside, which is a quick way, or you can click Add up here, all the same. So we can create a folder inside, and just call it Keepers. Let's say we want to do choosing selected folders. Excuse me, choose selected images. Now it automatically moves these into multiple subfolders. Now, if I wanted to take a few other photos, say this one, this one, this one, this one, you can click on them and actually drag them into this as well. So, and what you're noticing is it's moving them. So I not only have 25 in my December folder, I still have 30 in the December 2016 subfolder, excuse me, parent folder, but I have 25 and I can move my keeper. So I'm not keeping, I'm not creating copies. I'm not, it's actually moving these files into this keepers folder. So it actually allows me to quick filter. So as you're noticing as well in Finder, these 10 files moved from my original folder as well. So if you're going to change folders, move images around, create new folders, you want to do it inside Lightroom. It's really simple. There's nothing that you really need to. So if I wanted to move these, say I wanted to put all of these into all 30, which now I have all 30. Say we wanted to put them into a new, new folder. Right click. Well, again, spelling. Wow, too much coffee. So I can move the selected folders. Now all 30 are going to go into the reindeer portraits, and they're removed from the other ones. So I can right click on these. You can just remove these folders. They don't really matter. No reason to keep them. So now I have my reindeer portraits, and it's created my reindeer portraits here. So you can get as organized as you want. This is actually moving the files and creating folders. Now collections opens up a different option for you, right? You can create virtual folders. And what does that mean exactly? Well, I've already I have one here called keepers. So for instance, if I wanted to take these 10 and I wanted to move them into this keepers, those 12, they didn't go anywhere. They're still here. But now if I just want to look at those 12, I can do that by looking at my collections. I can also create more collections. So let's say, for instance, I wanted to, I really liked, the butt shot image, right? Let's say that was like that's a, collection that I wanted to do, and favorites, right? Am I spelling that correctly? Yeah. I can include selected folder. I can actually create a virtual copy too, which is interesting. So I can make a new virtual copy in case I want to do some editing on that image specifically, but I don't want to tamper with the original file. So what that's done, it's just creating, now I have 31 photos. As you notice, I have now automatically a virtual copy. And what I like about having that virtual copy in my favorites is now maybe I want to take that image and I want to make it black and white. I want to, go and do some auto mixing. We can click auto, start tampering with this image and really kind of, create something different altogether. So with that, and just kind of working with that quickly, I still have multiple versions of this image. I still have the color version, I have the black and white version. So I don't have to like do black and white and then I have to, then when I want to do a color, then I'd have to reset it and start all over. No, that's what Lightroom makes virtual copy. You can make virtual copies, virtual images, if you will. And now I have virtual folders so that black and white image can go in all by itself. But all of my images, of course, now in Lightroom, they all exist here. Now this copy black and white version does not make a version of that in Finder. That's the difference between Lightroom and working with virtual files and folders and Finder. Finder only has these 30, so you notice we still have 30 files, but you can create virtual copies, which is really nice for that kind of editing. But to move on into collections, you can do you can make collection sets. If I wanted to do a collection set and just call it gram, and within that I can put my favorites in there, I can put the keepers in there, and I'm just dragging those in there for now, and these kind of fall under under this whole different collection. Now I can create another collection for prints. I'm going to make sure I uncheck that so it has its own section there. So if I had they can create multiple versions. So now I held Option to do that, to go under favorites and create a multiple option under favorites for for the same thing. If I just click and drag, it's going to move it, right? But if I hold Option, same files, hold Option, click there, it's just gonna duplicate that. So there's collections become very useful for virtual organizing into different folders, and I like to think of it more as virtual folders as collection works in the same way that you have virtual copies. So with that, you have a few other options. If you want to build previews now, say I wanted to build previews on just these images here, I could select them in library mode, go down to previews, and now I have build standard, one-to-one, build smart previews. I still have those options. It's not as something that you have to determine at import or bust. I can build those one-to-one previews now, and since I already built a couple of them, you can see how slow they are. One-to-one previews are done. So now what that tells me is for these 6 files, as long as I haven't done any develop changes, they're going to be pretty instant. Now, as soon as we go past these 2 images, now I have to build them. As you notice, these ones has to build one for each one. So I like to build those before I start editing, before I do any work, because I don't want to sit here waiting for each of these to load when I'm going to select images. And that brings us into calling, right? Now we're ready to call. Let's just say these images here. I think all of these have standard previews, so we can view them at this view. And unless my computer slows down, so we don't have a standard preview for that yet. Can view all these, and unless I make a change in develop, because these haven't had any changes done to them develop wise, all the previews are the same. These images have not changed. So if we're going through and we want to start calling, I like to use flags, and a really quick way to sort of turn the lights out on your computer is hit the L key once. That gives you kind of a dim version, and then it also gives you one more time, gives you lights out. If I want to make this preview bigger, I'll hold shift and click tab. That removes all of my panels. As you see, all my panels went away, but the problem with that is it might have to build previews for these images now that I'm going to a larger, and it's not. See, it's going pixelated for a second. That's the delay on the computer. But as I'm going through these, I can choose a few different things. I can hit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 0. That's going to set my stars. But I don't like to do that. Now I have to think about multiple keys. I'm going through them. I can use my P key for pick, which is giving me a flag. I can use my U key, which is removing that flag, or my X key, that's considering this image rejected. I really like to use flags when I'm calling through my work, because if I set an image to rejected, it means I've gone through it, I don't like it, I don't need to look at it again. If it's unflagged, it means that it was good enough to keep. If it was flagged, it's definitely an image I would show a client, or something I'd maybe think about printing. Then I use stars, right? So if I'm going through these images, and I'm going through and I'm thinking, which of these are keepers? So I'll probably want to zoom in because I want to make sure they're sharp. These images, these first ones, they're a little soft, a little bit sharper. It's kind of grainy, but it's not a bad shot. It's got the bell in his mouth, as we're going through and kind of finding some cute images. That's a funny one. I got to keep that as long as it's sharp, right? We nailed that one. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that one. But I'm going through some of these images that are soft. I'm automatically doing the X key. That one's soft. Sorry. It's not, it's not usable. Soft. This one's sharp, so I'd probably keep it unflagged. That one's sharp, keep it unflagged. This one I'd get rid of. So I'm thinking about it objectively, right? Going through and removing that one. That's a funny face. It's having to load. So I didn't build one-to-one previews. So when zooming in like this, one-to-one previews might be a good idea as well, as if you're having to zoom in at the one-to-one, because I can't tell if that's 100% sharp. I have to zoom in. It's kind of a goofy face there. Slobber, probably would just X that one. And so as we're going through, that's where I'm making my decisions. If it's blurry, it's getting X'd. If it's sharp, I leave it alone. If it's a keeper, probably going to do it as a P. You also have that same option. As I'm going through with my left and my right arrows, just cycling between the images, I can hold Command and just do up for increasing my flag status. So that's going to add it. It's going to pick it. Going down is going to put it back to 0, and then going down is going to put it to rejected. That's a little bit simpler when thinking about selecting your images. As you can see, it starts to gray out the rejected ones, which I really like. If I star some of these images, I'm not going to know at this level, but as it grays them out, I really like that about about Lightroom, because you can reject them. So as I'm looking through here, I already know which ones I already know which ones have been X'd. So I can X any of these, and they're I already know I've gone through them. So it's just a little bit easier for culling. When I choose stars and things like that for printing, something I definitely want to use for like a print. Along with stars are kind of something I rate after the fact, but flags really work really well for just culling in general, an organization. But I don't need to get into a whole process. If you're using Photo Mechanic or a different program for selecting, that's perfectly fine. But mostly with organizing your images, you just got to create a plan that works for you, right? If you're bringing the images in, you're importing them from a card, from another source, just choosing a file structure that makes sense. I kind of have a place we call raw originals, where we dump everything. That doesn't have it's not a landmark moment. It's not something that a Christmas, a Thanksgiving, a first time doing something. Those just go in the raws, and you can filter in library by date, right? So my son was born in February, so I could filter by date and go through these and quickly filter through all the different folders for the dates. But if I want to get to a landmark moment, a real important time, allows me to do that with some of these other folders that I can create. And so Lightroom, you have a whole system here to organize your files, and using it correctly and understanding actual file folders here, virtual file folders here, and then you can create virtual copies. Those are great things that Lightroom will let you do to just organize this. When you're done shooting, what are you gonna do with your images, right? So the best thing you can do is following some of my tips, creating a plan that works for you. That's the most important thing. But use Lightroom for what it's good for, organizing your photos and then taking them in and doing some editing. But that's all I have for you guys. If you have any questions, definitely reach out. Let me know. Let me know if you have any plans that are different or use different ways. Of course, culling is a whole nother monster. Flags or no flags. Copying as DNGs. There's a whole mess of ways to bring your images in. Don't let my opinion sway you. Figure out what works best for you. But I think you're shooting in RAW. Just keep the images from RAW, right? You shouldn't be using older versions of Lightroom. You shouldn't be working in CS1 Photoshop. I mean, you're using up-to-date programs. Use RAW. That's what it's for. So thanks for tuning in, and look out for next month. We'll be talking about on-one RAW processing. Really great program to sort of talk about going from Lightroom to on-one RAW. So tune in for that next month.